This man was just about to have a meal when a major event occurred outside. He hurried out to see and found pedestrians all looking up at the sky. Ray followed their gaze and saw a massive dark cloud in the distance, pressing down like an abyss on the horizon. Curious, Ray rushed to the backyard for a clearer view. But the closer he got to the eye of the storm, the more violent the gale became. What was even more bizarre was that the wind was actually blowing toward the eye of the storm. The faint light emanating from the dark clouds suggested this was no simple matter. Sure enough, a second later the wind stopped abruptly. The surrounding noise vanished instantly, and the world felt like it had been put on mute.
It's okay.
Just then, as Ray finished speaking, the lightning became even more fierce. At first, he nonchalantly comforted his daughter, saying it was nothing. But once the lightning struck right in front of him, Ray hurried back into the house with his daughter. At this point, they did not yet realize the severity of the problem.
Lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place.
Ray hurriedly hid under a table with his daughter. While outside the window, lightning was frantically and repeatedly striking the exact same spot. After a long time, the lightning gradually subsided. When Ray went downstairs, he discovered that all appliances and electronic devices in the house were dead. The streets had already fallen into total chaos. Panicked cars were parked randomly on the roadside as fear spread among the citizens. Ray found his son Robbie, who had rushed back home, in the crowd. From Robbie, he learned that lightning had struck the same spot near the church on Lincoln Avenue 26 times in a row. A deep pit had been blasted into the ground. Ray told Robbie to go home and look after his sister while he went to Lincoln Avenue to see what was happening. Lincoln Avenue was already overcrowded. Ray squeezed through the crowd and found the pit still emitting rolling steam. The scattered rocks around it had been crystallized by the terrifying high temperature. Suddenly, someone noticed the pit was vibrating. Before anyone could react, the ground began to crack rapidly outward from the center of the pit. 2 police officers tried to evacuate the onlookers, but most people chose to stay and watch. Then the speed of the cracking suddenly accelerated. The church by the roadside was torn in half by the sheer pulling force of the fissure. The moment the church top crashed into the pit, the ground heaved like a breath and then collapsed. It was as if something was breaking through the earth. A car on the roadside had just slid into the pit when it was launched out by a mysterious force in the next second. Then the crowd saw a giant monster slowly rising from the pit. Ray finally saw clearly that it was a massive metallic beast. Someone tried to photograph the scene but died under the monster's laser in the next second. This laser seemed to have a strange annihilation effect. Anyone touched by it was directly decomposed into powder. Seeing things were wrong, Ray immediately bolted toward home. The buildings behind him collapsed and crumbled into ruins the moment the laser touched them. When Ray returned home and slumped on the floor, he couldn't say a single word. Seeing their father covered in bone ash, the children were curious about what happened. Ray gave no explanation and went to the bathroom. He didn't want to believe what he had just seen was real, but the truth was already scattered all over his body. Once Ray calmed down, he packed his luggage as quickly as possible. He even brought his prized revolver before leaving. Meanwhile, people on the streets were fleeing in all directions. Ray took the children to a friend's auto shop and picked a repaired car to escape. The friend tried to stop him, but Ray spoke his mind. As soon as he finished, flames erupted in the streets behind them. Seeing this, Ray shut the car door and drove away, leaving his friend behind. The friend who stayed was turned into ash on the spot by the laser. A short time later, Ray and the children reached his ex-wife's house, but it was empty. For safety, they went to the basement to spend the night. But unexpectedly, an accident happened late at night. As the lightning flashed faster, the basement began to shake as well. Realizing something was wrong, Ray immediately took the children to hide in the storage room and narrowly escaped death. The next day, the basement was completely devastated. When Ray stepped outside, he learned that a passenger plane had been attacked by a monster and crashed near the house. At that moment, a man and a woman were scavenging in the wreckage of the plane. They were television reporters. From the footage they filmed, Ray learned there was more than one monster. They seemed to have only one goal, which was to exterminate all of humanity. Then, by slowing down the lightning footage 1,000 times, it was clear that something had entered the ground along with the lightning. Clearly, that thing was controlling the monsters. As the reporter finished speaking, the roar of a giant beast suddenly came from the distance. Ray immediately said goodbye to the reporters and fled with his children. After some consideration, Ray decided to head to the coastal ferry first to see if there was a boat to cross the river. He wanted to go to the children's grandmother's house in Boston to take refuge. As they got closer to the ferry, there were more refugees on the road. Most of them had no transportation and could only carry belongings in shopping carts. Ray's family, having a car, naturally attracted the attention of all the refugees. These people went from begging Ray for a ride to threatening him very quickly. Then it rapidly escalated from threats to smashing windows and hijacking the car. In desperation, Ray pulled out his revolver and fired into the air as a warning. But Ray wasn't the only one with a gun. Amidst the chaos, there was a scream. Ray looked back to see a man pointing a gun at his forehead. Seeing this, Ray had to give up the car. But the man who got the car didn't get very far before being shot by the next person. The same happened to the next person as well. This cycle of killing would continue until the car was completely destroyed. Subsequently, Ray and the two children had to follow the refugees on foot. When they reached a railroad crossing, the barrier suddenly dropped. Then a train sped past them in flames. Clearly, no form of transportation was safe anymore. This was not just because of the monsters, but more so because of human nature itself. Soon, Ray and the children reached the coastal ferry, which was already overcrowded. A cargo ship was docked at the shore, and soldiers were organizing the refugees to board in an orderly fashion. However, just then, a flock of startled seagulls flew toward the sea. Looking in the direction the seagulls came from, Ray was horrified to find a monster approaching the ferry. Someone in the crowd started running first, and then a riot broke out like a chain reaction. Fortunately, Ray and the children were at the very front and managed to board the cargo ship. Just as the ship sailed out of the ferry terminal, a vortex suddenly appeared ahead. A monster emerged from the deep sea. The massive human cargo ship was like a toy in front of it. With just a gentle push, the monster flipped the entire ship over. Ray, falling into the water, quickly found his two children, but he looked back in horror to see the monster extending tentacles to pull the drowning refugees up one by one. Without time to think, Ray led the children and scrambled to the shore. The scene in the distance was even more terrifying. The monsters were harvesting human lives at will like grim reapers. The scraps of cloth falling from the sky represented individual human lives. Before dawn the next day, Ray and the group followed the main body of refugees all night. Soldiers constantly passed by them, rushing to the front lines to buy time for the evacuation. On the battlefield ahead, all of humanity's high-tech weapons were deployed, but they still could not cause any damage to the monsters. This tragic scene gave Robbie the sudden idea to join the army. Ray quickly put down his daughter to stop him, but Robbie had already made up his mind. With his son on one side and his daughter on the other, Ray was torn. Ultimately, he chose to let go of Robbie and take care of his younger daughter. However, at that moment, the front line suddenly fell. Under the surging flames, the monster appeared. Missiles fired by fighter jets couldn't even break through the monster's protective shield. Ray fled with his daughter and, with the help of a kind person, hid in a nearby basement. The kind man was named Harlan, and he seemed somewhat unstable. After talking to him, Ray learned that all of Harlan's family had died at the hands of the monsters. This had left Harlan in a state of frenzy, his mind filled with the thought of fighting the monsters to the death. He even tried to persuade Ray to join him, but all Ray wanted now was to keep his daughter alive. They spent the night like that. Early the next morning, many red vines appeared on the basement walls. These things seemed to be changing the Earth's environment. Suddenly, the noise outside stopped. Ray immediately told the babbling Harlan to shut up, but it was too late. Ray quickly picked up his daughter and carefully avoided the searching tentacle. However, when Harlan came to join them, the noise he accidentally made quickly caught the tentacle's attention. Fortunately, Ray acted quickly and took them both to hide behind a mirror. The tentacle saw its own reflection and soon forgot what had just happened. But at that critical moment, the daughter's foot slipped. The three of them hid to the side and narrowly escaped. The tentacle, finding nothing, slowly retracted from the basement. But just as the three of them breathed a sigh of relief, ripples suddenly appeared on the water's surface. Then, 4 alien creatures like reptiles crawled into the basement. They were curious about everything before them and slowly inspected everything in the basement. Harlan, looking at his enemies close at hand, impulsively pulled out a shotgun to kill the aliens and avenge his family. Seeing this, Ray rushed to stop him. While the two were struggling, the monster outside let out a roar. The 4 aliens received the message and immediately left the basement. Not long after the aliens left, the monster began spraying a red liquid. This liquid seemed to promote the growth of the red vines. Ray caught some in his palm and felt it looked more and more familiar. Harlan began screaming again. Ray hurried to stop him, only to see a terrifying sight. The monster lowered a man and then inserted a needle into his body. It turned out the raw material for that red liquid was actually human blood. Seeing this, Harlan completely broke down. He began digging a tunnel frantically, shouting that he would rather die in the tunnel than be drained of his blood. Ray knew Harlan had gone mad, and that continuing like this would surely attract the monster's attention. Ray silently went out to cover his daughter's eyes and then returned to the room, heavily closing the old wooden door. When Ray walked out of the room again, Harlan had been silenced forever. Despite it being a last resort, Ray fell into deep self-reproach. With his daughter's comfort, Ray fell into a heavy sleep. However, while the two were sleeping, that tentacle quietly crept back into the basement. The daughter's scream woke Ray up. He grabbed an axe and hacked at the tentacle. During this process, the daughter ran out of the basement in fear. When Ray finished off the tentacle and went outside to find his daughter, the world was covered in red vines. He looked toward the distance, where the blood-red color extended to the horizon. The entire world seemed to have turned into a bloody hell for humanity. Ray ran and called out for his daughter, but he ended up attracting the monster. That giant eye felt like a stare from hell. Although Ray managed to hide in a nearby car in time, he was caught by a tentacle in the next second and slammed hard onto the ground. Through the broken car window, he saw his daughter standing not far away. The monster had already discovered him as well. Ray immediately ran toward his daughter, but he was one step too late. He could only watch as his daughter was whisked away by an extended tentacle. Anxious, Ray quickly found an armored vehicle and grabbed some hand grenades, intending to stop the monster. But the power of a single grenade wasn't enough to shake the monster's shield. Instead, Ray himself was caught by a tentacle and thrown into a cage filled with people. This was the monster's blood bank. Whenever they needed human blood, a tentacle would randomly pull someone away. At that moment, the monster extended a tentacle again, and the target was his daughter. Ray didn't have time to think and immediately blocked his daughter, grabbing some grenades on his way. In the next second, Ray was pulled up. Fortunately, Ray's actions were noticed by a soldier. He immediately called everyone to help, and they pulled Ray down together. The grenades remained inside the monster. With a muffled bang, a chain explosion occurred inside the monster. Blood sprayed from its body like a rainstorm. Finally, with a loud roar, the monster collapsed. It turned out they were not invincible after all. Later, Ray and the others followed the fleeing crowd to Boston. At this time, Boston was also covered in red vines. But strangely, Ray found that some of the red vines had begun to wither. In the process of moving forward, Ray saw a paralyzed monster that appeared entirely ash gray. He learned from a soldier that an hour ago, this monster suddenly started spinning in circles and then collapsed on the spot. Ray wondered why the monsters were suddenly self-destructing. Then another monster appeared ahead, and its state was clearly wrong, swaying as if it could fall at any moment. The observant Ray noticed many small birds circling at the top of the monster. This meant the monster's protective shield had failed. Ray quickly reported this discovery to the nearest soldiers. When the soldiers looked up, they immediately understood what Ray meant. The soldiers quickly gathered and launched an attack. The monster, having lost its protective shield, became extremely fragile. The human weapons that were previously useless now easily caused massive damage. With just one round of firing, the monster could no longer withstand the firepower and crashed down. When the dust settled, the soldiers cautiously went forward to check. As the monster's hatch opened, an alien crawled out of the chamber. But the alien was extremely weak and died shortly after. Clearly, the aliens' bodies had suffered some kind of failure. Not long after, Ray reached his daughter's grandmother's house. Unexpectedly, Robbie, who had gone to join the army halfway, was also there. The battle on the front lines had completely stopped. Humanity had won this world war, though the victory was somewhat mysterious. Later, after much research, the mystery was finally solved. Those aliens didn't lose to humans. From the moment they set foot on Earth's territory, needing to breathe, eat, and drink, they were destined to lose. What defeated them were the ancient guardians born 4.6 billion years ago. Only after paying the price of billions of lives can humans earn the right to immunity and coexistence among these microbes. This is the strongest defense line humanity has built, invisibly. Though invisible to the naked eye, they exist around us like the vast galaxy.